What's up, everybody? Welcome to another session of our podcast. And today, very excited to have our very own Kim Stagg on the show. Kim, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Excited to be
Great.
here.
Yeah. So just for those of y'all that haven't met Kim yet, she is newer to our organization, but Kim has a really great extensive background in channel and channel operations. So for those of y'all that are considering maybe pivoting into this for your career at some point, I brought her on the show just so that she could tell a little bit about her story and to tell what life in channel is like. Um, so Kim, I think that that's probably a really great place to start. Would you mind giving us like a overview a little bit of your career? I think that you were a channel account manager first, and then eventually you made it into operations. So I'd love
Mhm.
to hear your story about how you started out in channel, moving over from sales to channel. What appealed to you about that, and what eventually led you to channel operations, and some of the things you learned along the way.
Sure. I actually started my career working for a distributor, which is their channel partners. We do work with distributors throughout the world. And I was a sales rep. So as a distribution sales rep, I called on resellers, and those resellers sold to end users. Um, very early on, I really enjoyed the process of selling. Um, I used to get in and reorganize team mailboxes and make up processes to make things easier. That was like, we were on a team of 4, and that was always my niche. Like, what are you going to do? Um, but, selling in the channel in general is very, very relationship based. I mean,
Hmm,
sales in general is,
that's
but
interesting.
the channel is all about partnerships. Um, it's companies working together to get to a common goal. Whether that goal, I mean, it's typically selling a product, but when you have multiple organizations working towards selling the same product, obviously the success of every level is important, because if one level fails, then the sale doesn't go through. So when you're working in the channel, you need to remember that it's not just your company. It's there's numerous other companies in that pipeline, which means pipeline is also very interesting to manage, and it's different, and you have to like go to other people like, oh, what's your commit? It's not just you and the end user anymore. There's other people involved. So I I was in my early 20s, and I just really fell in love with organizing it and people. I'm a people person. I mean, naturally at home, I'm an introvert. Um, but
Me too.
yeah, but I really love helping people.
Yeah.
And that's what spoke to me about the channel. And especially those first 10 years when I was working with distribution, was I wasn't just selling a product. I mean, I was selling a lot of products, lots of different vendors, but it was always, I always took the perspective of, I'm only going to sell it if it's helpful. And what I'm doing is helping my partners as well. So I really enjoyed that. I had a little stint off in marketing because I wanted to be a writer. That was great. It wasn't for me like I thought it was. So I jumped back into sales and specialized in virtualization for a little while. Um,
What product? I'm curious.
I worked with VMware.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
the 5,000 pound giant.
exactly. And then I worked with the redheaded stepchild of the 5,000-pound giant, and I managed the renewals, VMware renewals, for a lot of years. It was exhausting but rewarding work, and it was, virtualization was exploding, SaaS was exploding at that time, so it was very exciting, and there's a lot of things going on. But my life took me to Michigan. So I left the company where I was, and that was in Florida, and I moved to Michigan to become a channel account manager, which is really what I wanted. Um, I wanted to work for a vendor. I didn't really care if it was software or hardware. I
Mhm.
fell into software and have stayed here since 2010. Um, and I Everything that I just said about partnerships, it like times 10 when you're working for a vendor, because now it's your product that you have to sell. When I was working for distribution with VMware, I didn't work for VMware. I worked for the distribution partner. So the relationships that I made as a CAM, they were not just with salespeople. I was working with VPs, in some cases CEOs. I was going to very high level meetings and learning to negotiate, learning to budget. There's a lot of selling involved, but it's not the majority. It's a good 50-50 split. You have to know your partners, you have to know their business, and you use that to influence the selling more. And that's when you get involved in programs. We have a channel programs team that's separate from channel operations here at GitLab. And that's what they do. It's like, you have to learn all the programs. We have our own program. It intermingles with some of our partners' programs. And so it's a lot of, the sale doesn't just end the process. You finish the sale and there's always more, because you're not working with end users. So you don't just move on to the next, you're working with the partners. So that sale is finished and you're on the phone the next day, hey, what else is in your pipeline that I can help you with? So it's a lot of communicating. And I really enjoyed that. I got to work with different levels and everything.
That sounds really complicated. I think almost like the complexity in just regular the business sales. It's you have to navigate the social hierarchy and that whole network of relationships and figure out the economic buyer and everything. And it's just sort of as opposed to doing that for your customer, you're doing it for these other partner organizations, and you might have multiple of them. That sounds
usually organizations will the company that I worked for at the time, it was a very small company. There was less than 300 employees. So I had a lot on my plate. I worked with distributors and resellers, and there was a few systems integrators that I worked with. Typically you specialize, by name, I worked with distributors. So I got to specialize in that, and I didn't have to know as much about the others. So pretty much throughout my career, distribution has been my specialty. And that makes it a lot easier, because it is a lot to know. And there are a lot of people. And, my other career option was actually, I wanted to be a therapist or go into psychology, which is drastically different, I know. But, but it's actually not, because when you're working in sales and you're working with salespeople, so in the channel, you work with other salespeople, it's important to know what motivates human beings on the larger scale, because just think about it. Let's talk about hardware. It's easy for a second. There's a gazillion companies that make keyboards, right?
Yeah.
Why, if you work for one of those vendors, why sell my keyboard as opposed to that keyboard or the other keyboard? So you have to incentivize people appropriately.
That's interesting.
And you do that on, what incentivizes humans, what incentivizes companies, and what incentivizes individuals. And the answers to that are always different.
That's really interesting. So I have so many questions. Actually, before we dive into some of the questions that I have, thanks for such a great explanation about channel sales. It's honestly I've just experienced channel sales through my side of the fence, which was on the the SA sales side itself, and then just honestly hearing about people complaining about channel partners trying to get unfair margins all the time. That's 90% of all that I heard of whenever we talked about channel partners. But so thanks for the explanation about being a channel account manager. That's super fascinating for me. Can you walk me through the rest of your journey to channel operations? So
Sure.
just sort of so I remember there was like a team of people that if you wanted like a Salesforce dashboard or like, you know, some data pulled out or something like that, then that's what sales operations was. So is it fair to say that channel operations is just sort of like the equivalent of that except for channel? Or like, can you tell me the distinction between sales ops and channel operations? So I guess it's a multifaceted question, but like what is channel operations and what drew you there? Just to
Well,
simplify.
yeah, I'm gonna answer them in reverse, like what drew me here first, which
Yeah.
was, like I said in the beginning of my career, really fell in love with like the organization of things. Um, I didn't know what that was. I was just like, hey, I'm good at this. Um, and that followed me through all of my roles. And um, at one point at my last company, I met with my vice president and I was like, we have some major things missing here, like organization, conversation between these two teams, and like, how is that going to work, and how are we going to manage our partner relationships when everything that we have set up for Salesforce is only managing our customer relationships because they're different. And he was like, oh, that's a really good point. And I was like, well, here's what I see. And I pitched something to him like over lunch. You know, it was not well thought out. And 2 weeks later, I had a new job as the channel operations manager at my company. And I was no longer selling, I was
Did you
organizing.
did you go into that meeting planning on pitching a new
No,
role, or was it just it's kind of funny
I
how
did
life works
not
out
plan on.
sometimes.
I knew I was unhappy selling. I was on the road like 75% of the time and I just couldn't
Yeah,
do it anymore.
yeah,
I I didn't actually like in my brain walk the process of this means you might have a new job in a month. But
y-
it worked out very well for me, so I'm not mad about it. Um and so for at the beginning that's what operations was for me, making sure things work. So yes, that is very similar to sales operations. We make sure things work. Um, but the specifics are very nuanced. Um, so I actually work very closely with the sales ops team here at GitLab.
yeah,
Um, but obviously how you, because of just the way I described sales, it's so much relationship and so much, relying on somebody else to give you information on the stage of a sale. Like if a reseller is working the sale and we're just kind of in the background letting them manage that sale, we are completely reliant on them to give us information, which means we're going to have to manage that differently within Salesforce. um, so for example, one of the
oh,
things we're doing now is a partner account is going to look very differently than a customer account in Salesforce because we need to know different things.
mm-hmm.
Um, we need to know a lot of the specifics of a customer account. We need to know for partners, hey, what level partner are they? Do they have any certifications on our products? What do they specialize in? Do they typically sell DevOps, or do they just have a customer that needed it so they wanted to sell it? That's pretty rare in the DevOps space, but it does happen. So I work side by side with sales ops in terms of building the things in Salesforce, making sure they work, making sure the integrations work between our partner portal and Salesforce. Because in sales, you do a lot for your customer. You make sure everything happens. Yeah, they might like sign up for something and do a little self-serve, but we require our partners to go create an account in our partner portal so that they can do training, so that they can get certifications, so that they can register deals so we know what they're working on. And so it's a lot of enablement. So our programs team work with the partners to make sure they're enabled, and the channel ops team makes sure the systems are working for that enablement.
Gotcha. Yeah, so thanks for that explanation. And I loved hearing your story. I guess my follow-up question is, and just a little bit of context for those that may not know what like the different tier of channel partners is. Typically, there's different tiers, and the different tiers get different discounts. And to get into tier 1 or tier 2, you have to get certifications and stuff like that. Um, but Kim, I'd love to hear about. I guess we've already touched a little bit on this. So correct me if I'm wrong, but like the day-to-day for Actually, there's just so many things that like I'd love to learn more about. Channel has always been one of those things where it's like it's kind of been mysterious to me. So I'm
Mhm.
glad that I have you on the show. But actually, let's just take a more macro-oriented question right now. So, what sort of companies invest in channel? So, like, obviously, it's a more advanced sales play, right? So, you have a startup, you build a product. Once the product feels sales worthy, then you start investing in marketing and your direct, to business sales if you're selling to corporations. Um, but it then at a certain point in time, you want to invest in building it out the channel, right? So if you have other people selling your stuff, then that just enforces your bottom line too.
Mhm.
You incentivize them, you give them a discount. I guess it's a two-part question. How mature in a company's timeline would a company start thinking about investing in channel? Um, just because that's a lot of resources, right? I imagine, and it's probably a long-term play. Is that fair? Um, yeah. What do you think about that? So let's just say
Um,
that, like, for typical startup in Silicon Valley, they have their product, it's getting traction. Like, when do these tech companies start really thinking about investing in channel?
there's no specific formula that makes it work that way. There are organizations that start up and they go all channel and they don't sell direct. They don't have a direct sales team. So sometimes that's part of the initial business plan
That's
is
interesting.
we are going to invest in the channel instead of investing in our own sales organization. Um, why? Maybe it's reach. Maybe it's Silicon Valley, but they're selling all over the world. So to bring on and hire salespeople all over the world doesn't work for where they want to put their focus. Um, a lot of times it's a hybrid, like what you just described. Like you get going for a little while, you get a little traction, and then you go into the channel market. Um, and then sometimes it's been a really long time. I know companies that have been in existence for 20 years and then get into the channel. And you can kind of move around. It's not necessarily encouraged, but like you join the channel, maybe you go, half direct, half channel, and then that kind of moves a little bit. It really depends on the specific company. There's not like you should be here before you jump into channel. And one of the reasons for that is because one of the biggest benefits to working with the channel is, simply put, business process outsourcing. Whatever you want to call it, whether it's sales, whether it's business planning, whether it's managing QBRs, channel partners help with that. Everything I've said, because I was in channel sales for most of my career, I just focused a lot on sales stuff. But there's a lot of other pieces to the channel. Um, they can help with routes to market. They can help with stocking, and that includes hardware and software because there are still places that stock perpetual licenses. Stock. Um, it's a list of license codes, but it does happen. Um, if you're working with a software company that has been selling perpetual licenses, which means you sell the license once and they own it forever. Um, and that company wants to move to a SaaS model like ours, which is where you have to buy it every month or every year, like you just continually pay for it. Um, channel partners can help with that process. So there's a lot of reasons other than just sales. Um, obviously, if you're a startup and you've been around for, I don't know, a year or two, like if you're really young and you start working with some big channel partners, you're going to automatically have a much larger sales force than you could have hired right away. So that's a big pull.
I imagine that has, when you're talking to these channel partners, they have all the leverage then in that situation, right? So it's like you're the small guy, I'm this big reseller or something like that. Therefore, I want huge margins or something like that. Is that fair to say?
Um, the margin, yes. Um, margin is a touchy thing. There a lot of times it has to do with the product's position in the market. For example, like I said, I worked with VMware, you know, a little over a decade ago. So VMware was hot back then. I mean,
Yeah,
they still are. They're huge, but like they were legitimately exploding. So everybody wanted to sell it. So we didn't have to offer huge margins. GitLab is a very hot product. When products kind of get out of that, oh my gosh, I need to have it, then you might need to incentivize with a little more margin, back end, front end, however you know, whatever that looks like, whether it's rebates or off the front. But a lot of times with hot products, like our products here, the channel partners want to sell it because it's what their customers want. And one of the biggest benefits to channel partners is that they have relationships with the end users.
yeah,
The systems integrators, they know what their customers have because they've done all the work.
that's really interesting.
So you have, you know, a person who works, you know, for say for GitLab, and they are trying to get in with an end user because we think that we'd be a good fit, right? They have to go and do all the work to figure out what are they using, how can we be of service, you know, where will our products work there. It's a obviously salespeople have been doing that forever, and we will likely continue to do that forever. When you do it with a channel person, they already know that entire infrastructure and the people that you need to work with. So it makes it a little easier in that sense. You're
Yeah,
partnering with one person who can get you into, I don't know, 25 end users, you know, 25 customers, instead of one person constantly pounding the pavement for all 25 of those people.
yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but so the reason why a business would want to invest in channel is one, it helps them scale out their sales force. Let's just say you're a small company and there's this huge reseller or channel partner, then all of a sudden you theoretically have like 10,000 people selling your good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then also the other benefit is that making all these relationships takes time and money, right? So you have to invest in your marketing, and then you have SDR, and then that's how you get leads. But if these channel partners already have a relationship into all these accounts, then time's money, right? So you're
Exactly.
willing to give the channel partners a discount just because you've saved time in getting that lead. And if you're a small guy, they might not have heard of you, so they might not like want to have a conversation with you too. But if it's some really big reseller like what what's the big one that's uh gosh, it's not coming to my head right now, but like can you name me some big resellers like just for the audience here?
Sure. So CDW is the
Yeah,
biggest.
CDW.
A lot of people have heard of CDW. You can just go on their website and order things as well. And they're everywhere. SHI is another big one. And you may have heard of Insight. They've been around a lot, you know, even in just like I've seen some Insight commercials lately. They just acquired a whole bunch of companies over the past 5 years. Um, so these are big, like worldwide companies. Software One is another one, and they have a pretty big presence, you know, throughout the world. So that's really great when you know your GitLab is special because we do have a worldwide presence because of the business model that we have. But
Yeah,
outside of that, if you think like, hi, I go to an office in, you know, this town in this state in the US, but I call on people in Latin America, you're going to want somebody to help you out there, which is the other big benefit to, you know, you work with channel partners who know the market that they're in if you're not physically in that market.
yeah. Um, I'd love to. One interesting question that I have is, all right, so I recently was buying this service through this website, and then I had a direct message, and the fees were honestly like 30 to 40%. And what I ended up doing is just like direct messaging. This is actually Airbnb. So like the cleaning fee and all this other stuff was like 40% my bill. So I actually, maybe I shouldn't tell this story, but bottom line is that like what what incentive does, all right, so like let's just say that like CDW is a really big reseller of like VMware, Red Hat, basically almost all like tech people, right? So why don't the companies just cut out CDW and just go direct to like VMware? Because aren't you cutting out the middleman and just wouldn't you, they must know that like they have to get a cut of that, right? So isn't it, is it cost neutral to go between a partner and the original direct for businesses?
Usually it is
Okay,
cost neutral or close. Um, One of the benefits is if you're a company and you're buying, say, VMware through CDW, um, you're likely buying more than just your VMware products. So instead of having to have relationships with 700 vendors to facilitate your business, you can have a relationship with CDW, one person, your sales rep from CDW, instead of the
I got it.
700. So there's that, because again, time is money. Um, and then the other benefit is that a typical, and I say this, you know, sensitively, a typical um, pricing channel structure is that the vendor lists MSRP. So if you buy directly from the company, you're going to pay MSRP. There's not a lot of negotiating there.
Yeah,
Um, when that vendor sells to channel partners, typically the channel partner is given a discount. So say it's 10%. I'm just going to use round numbers.
yeah,
The channel partner is given a discount of 10%. And so there's 10% between what they pay and what MSRP is. They can then charge the customer MSRP and make that 10%. That's their take home.
yeah,
Or they can charge 9%. I don't know, because they want to win a deal. Maybe they're competing with other resellers. Um, and so the channel partner has a little leeway and doesn't have to charge as much. Oftentimes, customers pay a little bit less if they go through channel partners because of the competition within the channel. If you go direct, you pay MSRP. Very rarely is that discounted, is that negotiated. When you're selling a big deal through a channel partner, there's a lot of negotiating because they have those points to go with.
yeah. I think that it's really interesting. Whoever like sets up this system must do a lot of like complex math, because I remember a situation that would happen from time to time is that we would be trying to sell direct, but then sometimes it would end up like almost like competing with the channel partner. And then
Mm-hmm.
so it's just sort of like you have to create some sort of incentive structure where it's like, and so that's the comp plan for the sales rep. That's also the plan that you have with the channel partner itself. But as long as you like maintain cost neutrality, then who cares, right? The customer just gets to choose. If they want to have a relationship with
Right.
CDW, good for them. If they want to have a relationship with, you know, Microsoft, Google, then that's fine too. So it's just give them the choice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, great. I know that. Thanks for such a great explanation for channel. I think that all of this is super insightful. Talk to me more about the operations side. So I know that we've spent most of the time on talking about the channel. What is the channel? Why does the channel exist? I think all that's helpful, but talk to me about operations side. So like on a day-to-day, like walk me through the day-to-day of someone in sales or channel operations, seeing how you told me that they're somewhat similar. But like what are some of the things that you're thinking about? What are you doing? What are your priorities? What's a project look like? um
Um,
yeah, can you help me through that?
well, um, regardless of what the activity is, I personally go into everything thinking about efficiency,
Hmm.
because with any business decision or business relationship, if it's not efficient, we're going to have some problems.
Yeah.
And that's really where operations comes in. We need to, there's NFR keys, not for resale, that, we allow our partners. There needs to be some rules and structure around that. So that's something that channel operations works on a lot, is making sure there's rules and structures to the benefits that we offer our partners. Because I've never worked outside of the channel, I don't know if there's an equivalent in sales ops. But a day in the life is, I come in now. I have to tell you, I'm on day 30, so this might change in another 2 weeks. Like I'm brand new, fresh here at GitLab.
Yeah.
But regardless, in any of the operational roles I've had, I come in and I check all my notifications, whether it's Salesforce, email, my issues, and see, are there things that are maybe not working great that I need to go in and fix? So operations is a lot of problem solving. It's a lot of puzzles. It's why I like it. I try to, how can I get from point A to B in the most efficient way and make sure it works? So
Yeah.
it's putting all those pieces together. So, I mean, if you look in a lot of the accounts in Salesforce, you'll see, all the chatter at the top of the account. And it's like, hey, this field isn't working, or can you change this field because I don't have the right permissions? Or this one didn't sync right and there's a whole bunch of missing information.
Yeah.
So that's a day in the life. That's a lot of my morning. It's just those one-off questions that I can just answer, fix, get out of the way. Because, we're working with humans and we're working with computers, and neither of those things work 100% of the time. So that will always exist, in my opinion. Those things will never go away.
Yeah.
And then in terms of projects, like I said, we need to have a policy around who's going to get a not for resale license, because it's not for resale. We're allowing someone to use our product without paying for it. They use it for demos. There's a lot of reasons why you'd have an NFR key, but we need to make sure, one, it's trackable, two, it's not being taken advantage of, and three, it's easy for our team to implement. So one of those projects is building that and then upholding that. Another big one is deal registration. What are the
Are we
points of
doing
deal
that?
registration?
Are we doing that now for GitLab, coming up with the NFR keys?
It's one of the projects that my boss just talked to me about yesterday.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So
Um,
channel operations at GitLab is about 3.5 months old. The channel at GitLab is less than a year old. So it's a really exciting time in channel and in channel operations, because there's a lot of new things that we get to build. And sales ops is similar, but because it's sales, it's been around pretty much since the beginning of we tried to start selling stuff. It's not as much as build. It's more of uphold and make sure it keeps going. And like we say, we're going to iterate, we're going to make it better, we're going to find more efficiencies, and then we're going to iterate again. That is what GitLab is based on. It is also kind of the backbone of operations.
that's cool. How receptive have the channel partners been to GitLab? So it's like we made a bet, right? Like we're gonna invest in the channel. Hopefully they scale out our sales force. Have they been receptive to selling their stuff, or like is it still
Yes.
we're making those relationships, or how's that playing out?
Um, well, to answer your question, both. We are still in the process of making a lot of those relationships, but because our product is so great, they want to sell us.
That's
We're
cool.
getting partners coming to us all the time, signing up in our partner portal. I thought it was really interesting. When I changed jobs on my LinkedIn, I got
Oh, people hit you up.
oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I think I got 17 messages like, oh, we want to be a GitLab partner, or we just signed up on the portal. Can you help us? And I was like,
that's awesome.
that's really cool. So
Yeah.
we are in a really great position, and because just we have a great product, we have a great company, so people want to work with us. It's not always that way, and let me tell you, the less expensive your product is, the harder it is to get traction in the channel, because everything's based on margins. If you're making a 10% margin on a $50 product, that's not a lot. But if you're making a 10% margin on a $500,000 product, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things. So we actually have like this great structure at GitLab. So the partners, it's our product is hot, people want it, and so partners want to work with us, which is really exciting. It just means all of your operations teams are real busy.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. All right, I think I have one more question before we start talking a little bit more about like, all right, I'm someone who's new in sales, what sort of things that should I start doing to prepare myself if I wanted to enter into channel at some point in time in my career. But last question that I have, and this is something I've always kind of wondered about, is how comp works. So if I'm not asking for salary ranges, people can look that up on like pay scale or whatever. But if you're doing direct sales, you're probably like 50% base, 50% commission, depending on the role.
Mm-hmm.
But with like for a channel account manager, like you talked about forecasting earlier and how you have to like call these channel partners for them to forecast, and that's like an even more advanced exercise. So is it like, are channel account managers, are they quota carrying, or like how does that work? And is it like you're based, are you all still 50-50? I imagine that it'd probably be like 75-25 for a cam. I'm just curious as to how it works
Yeah.
typically.
Um, well, I should start by saying that channel operations actually falls under field operations. So what I do doesn't, like, I just have a salary. Channel account managers, however, you're pretty spot on. I don't know specific to GitLab, but in the industry, when you're a channel account manager, you have a little, it's not typically 50-50. You have a little bit higher of a base. And sometimes there's a commission element. Almost always there's a goal bonus element.
That's
Um,
interesting.
yeah. So instead of like, you get 0.2% on all your sales, and that's just how much you make. It's like, well, your goal is 5 million every quarter. And if you hit 75% of that, you get 75% of your stated bonus. If you hit 80% of that, you get 80% of your standard bonus, or however that specific comp plan works. The numbers could vary, but it's very, very typical to have the majority of a channel account person's the part of their, sorry, I'm like stumbling over my words, the part of their pay that is movable, like not their base salary, but the majority of everything else is usually bonus related. Sometimes there's commission, sometimes there's not. I've worked under both, where I made a base salary, I made a commission, and I made a bonus. And the commission was always the smallest part.
Do you have a quota typically as a cam?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like I'm responsible for the CDW relationship. I expect CDW to sell $10 million of our stuff. If they sell $11 million, and I get some form of like bonus or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, this talk was super enlightening for me. I appreciate you sharing your experience. I loved hearing your story.
Mhm.
I love how you think about some of these things. It's very obvious that you understand the business really well. Um,
I fell into
yes,
the channel and then found out that I loved it. Like I said, my other career thing was like being a therapist. So I was really surprised that I was like, I love this. I
that's kind
remember
of
being in
funny.
my 20s like, this is not where I thought my life was going.
Yeah, that's honestly, so you're the fourth person that I'm interviewing. Um, and it's actually really interesting how many, I remember the first person that interviewed her, it was her fifth job until she landed into the thing that she really wanted to do.
Hmm.
So I think it's really cool for those of y'all that are listening to this podcast right now. fact of the matter is, it's like it's iterating, right? So sometimes you implement something new and it's not what you expect. But the problem is, the good thing is, either A, will get you closer to where you want to go, or B, you now learn something new about yourself. And both of those are valuable, right? So Kim, I'd love to hear your uh, thoughts on what type of person would make a good fit for channel account management or channel operations. So it's like, so it's like if you were like a hiring manager and you knew all these people, then what are some of the traits that you look for? So not just the skills, but like the personality traits, right? So I imagine for channel operations, like really good attention to detail, ability to prioritize. Like, I'm just curious as to like what type of people, like, if you have X, Y, and Z, then maybe you should consider these roles, and it might be a great fit for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're going to go into channel account management, similar to sales, you need to like people. Um, Overall, I mean, most of us these days will talk about how we just don't like people. But outside of that, like, um, you don't go into work any day and sit at your computer and just sit at your computer and do your work. You're constantly talking to people. Um, and, you have to be friendly, you have to be likable,
Yeah,
and you have to have a thick skin and be able to say no. And those things don't always go together. Um, a lot of people hear I have to be likable, and then they think I need to do everything in my power to be likable. But it's not. You have to have the boundaries that go with it because there's business on the line.
yeah,
And it's important to know some things are bad business. I don't mean like dirty business. I just mean that's not a good deal, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Or if you're talking to a channel partner, like I see that that's your focus, that's not where I'm going. My company is doing this. Can we partner up around here? Like, so, and you're, like I said, you're talking to, VPs, presidents, and CEOs. So you have to be able to uh, not back down, even when people pull rank, which doesn't happen often, but it can. So in order to be in the account management realm, it is similar to sales, but it can get a bit more personal because you're working with the same people again and again and again and again.
yeah,
Um, and for operations, whether it's sales or channel or anything like that, attention to detail is a big one, like you mentioned. Um, Having an analytical brain is also very helpful. Um, if you are always saying why, or if you look at something and go, that could be better, there are people who just think like that, like, oh, that could be better if we did this. That's a really great trait. Um, Being able to foresee roadblocks. That was one of the biggest changes for me when I switched within the same company from being a cam to being in channel operations. I would still meet with my cams all the time. They would be like, I want to develop this program for, I don't know, this type of company. And I'd be like, okay, what are you thinking? And they'd go through, an outline of what would make it easy to sell. And then I would reply with, okay, we can do that. Here are some of the roadblocks that I see in your plan. We can just, change it a little bit to make sure those roadblocks don't happen.
yeah.
And one of the responses I got was, oh, because I used to be a cam, they would say, oh, that's why you're in this role now. I never would have thought about that. It's just
Mm,
one of the ways my brain works. So you have to be able to see the forest and not just the trees.
yeah,
Sometimes you need to stare at a tree for a while, but you also need to back up and see how that tree's branches are touching other trees' branches.
yeah,
Um, Very much a big picture game. Whereas channel account manager, it's still a sales role. You still need to make that sale happen.
yeah.
So that's
Got-
probably one of the biggest differences I've noticed is, where you're focusing on. Um, but either way, you're working with people. Anybody in sales is working with people. So you can't hate people.
Is there as much pressure for making quota in a cam role as there is in a sales role. So I
Right.
remember like when I was in sales, like towards the end of quarter, we would have like all of these meetings every single day, and you get called into people's like managers' offices and stuff like that. How's this deal coming along? Blah blah. Give me the update. So like so it's like in sales, like it's 50-50 split, typically base variable. Like cam, it's less. So, but that it sounds like the pressure is still there, even though that it's not because of the comp incentive.
Absolutely. If
That's
you
interesting.
sit in a channel sales forecast call, it's the exact same as a sales forecast call. I shouldn't say that. I'm assuming I've never done non-channel sales, but it's like, what's happening with this deal? Where are we going to close it? Your goal is $1 million. You're at 649,000. Where are you going to make that up? Where's that extra money going to come from? Can you find any other deals? Why did that deal push? Why did that deal go dead? It's still um, very on the line. It's compensated differently, but it doesn't change the overall intention behind it.
Is the job stability a little bit more than a traditional sales role where it's like, hey, you missed quota for 2 consecutive quarters, like I'm going to put you on a PIP or something like that?
I think that's probably company specific.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Cool.
I've
I want to
seen
dive into that.
both. Yeah, I've seen both happen. Um, Sometimes a channel deal takes longer to close because there's more people involved.
Yeah.
Not all the time. So there is consideration for that, but that's a very small thing. Like that's not something that people are going to see often.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
still
Kind
sales
of
baseline. You're still being treated like a salesperson.
still sales. Okay. Thanks for shedding light on the fit. How would you recommend that someone get started? So let's just say I'm a new salesperson here at in my role. I'm at month 6. I'm thinking about maybe making this something that I want to explore in my career. Like, how would you recommend like, making that? I think that when I've spoken to, so this is call number, this is like this is the 4th conversation that I've had, right? And I think that one of the things that's really interesting to me is just how people just like end up in their role a lot of the time. But like, um, if someone wanted to be intentional about it, then how would someone prepare and position themselves to either get into channel operations or a cam role?
um, well, I mean, on the operations side, if you find yourself really looking at the how and not just the what, and trying to figure out why this is happening and making it better, not just for sales for the sake of the company, but for the sake of the process itself. That's a good key. That's what the key was for me. And honestly, reach out to an operations person that you've worked with, or an operations name that you've seen in an account in Salesforce, whether it's channel or sales. And
Network.
yeah,
Network.
network, like read what they're doing, see what the questions are. Like if you don't want to just like reach out and be like, hey, I think I'm interested, because that can be kind of overwhelming at times. As much of a people person as you are, it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
So look to see where your role intersects with that, because if you're in sales, if you're a new salesperson, your role is 100% intersecting with something operations did, because they're building the processes that you're being taught to follow.
Yeah.
Um, so, look for those names and see how. We're lucky here at GitLab that GitLab is so interested in iteration. So look at the iterations that you can see in the opportunities. Did you notice that something changed? Why? Who changed it? Like, and kind of start to look at that. And if you're interested, talk to the people whose names you're seeing in these changes. Um, if you think that you're interested in channel sales as opposed to channel ops, um, that's one that your best bet is probably just networking. And that's also going to be really good, because in order to be in the channel, you need to network.
Yeah.
So reach out to anybody in the channel organization. Like I said, I'm fairly new to GitLab, and I'm just meeting all of these people. They're all wonderful. GitLab did a really great job hiring from the top down when they were like, "Hey, we're going to go channel," and it's been really refreshing and exciting for me to be a part of that. Even though like I'm a little, I'm in field ops, but I work mainly with the channel team. Um, reach out, reach out to some of the people that are in sales. Reach out to some of the channel managers and ask some questions. Um, it's an exciting time to be in the channel business, specifically here. Um, so my guess is that they're probably going to be like, yeah, let me tell you this, or why don't you jump on this call? When I used to train people that were interested in channel sales, the first thing I would do is pull them on a call with me. Just be like, hi, I'm introducing this person. They're just going to sit here and listen because it's a different type of conversation.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest recommendation for people that are like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Just dip your toe in it.
Okay. Well, thank you for telling your story today.
Mhm. Thanks for having me. This has been great.
Yeah. Okay. Have a great day. See ya.
Thanks so much.